Hey everyone, my name is Tim Peacock and I am the founder and artistic director of the Nelsonville Music Festival and Stewart's Opera House, just up the road from here in Nelsonville, Ohio. I'm really happy and excited to be here, and I have the privilege to have a conversation with someone who I envy and respect, who does the same thing that I do, but on a much more well-known and larger scale. My guest is executive producer of the Nelsonville Music Festival, of the Newport Folk Festival and the Newport Jazz Festival and the Newport Festivals Foundation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit, which expands the impact of its festivals through music education initiatives throughout the U.S. He has had a monumental impact on the live music industry through his curation and development of these festivals. During his tenure, the Newport Folk Festival has won, among other things, 5 Polestar Awards for Music Festival of the Year. Please join me in welcoming Jay Sweet. Hi, Jay.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
I didn't know I just took your job. It's the Nelsonville job. So
Good luck. Yeah.
Hey, everybody. Hey, everybody in camera land.
How are you?
I'm fantastic. It's been a while. I stopped doing these. I got banned, blacklisted from South by Southwest 6 or 7 years ago.
Rabble-rousing?
Yeah, it was a long Bill Murray tequila thing. And I realized that it was the single best thing I've done is to not do these things. But Josh is such an incredible, powerful force in trying to keep the next generation prepared. Our relationship, and then a big shout out to the guys from camp who, such great family that they've thrown us a party tonight. And I was like, hey, if that's enough for me to finally break my long promise of never doing these things. So I feel great. I'm a little nervous because it's been out of practice, but.
Same.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're here. I'm glad we can talk about this because the only time I ever see you is at your festival.
You don't see me. I just
you just
go
float
by.
by.
That's right.
I did come to one of your showcases at South by one year when it was, I think was it at Scoot Inn or somewhere down on the east side somewhere.
It all blurs into one.
It was the first time I ever saw Margot Price.
Yeah.
Was at that showcase.
It's interesting. It's interesting because Margot has one of those amazing things where she actually, quote, played Newport, sang at Newport on the stage 3 times before actually getting her own set.
Oh, wow.
As guests. And
just as part of
as
your
part
family.
of the vibe. Yeah, as part of the family.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I have one other question before I have actual real questions. When's the last time, if ever, you've been in the state of Ohio?
My parents, after not performing well in college, my parents, they said, well, if we're not going to fly you back for Christmas and Thanksgiving or whatnot, so should you want to come back home in the near future, you can get your ass there yourself. So I went to University of Colorado, and I would do it in like 33 hours.
Yeah.
And this was the naturally strange where I would just be so exhausted after like snorting no-dos and whatnot that I would like crash here, like in this area. So that was the last time. I was, I think, 19.
Oh, that's a trip.
It's like the no-dos thing wasn't working, so.
Yeah. That's a brutal drive once you come off that front range in Colorado. It's just flat forever.
I was like, okay, no matter how badly I wanted to get home, I was like, I'm going to stop in Ohio.
Yeah.
So that's it. I haven't been back since 19. I'm 51.
Well, welcome back.
Thank you.
The great state welcomes you.
I enjoyed your largesse and your hospitality last night a little too much. So I'm a little groggy. If I start speaking in tongues, it was because of the kindness of the people last night.
Oh, good.
And dancing to Michelle DJ.
Yeah, that was
I'm a little
fun.
sore.
That was really fun.
That was fun.
So maybe just for folks that are less familiar, could you give just sort of a brief, like maybe a long elevator ride of the history and
Wow.
maybe hit on George Wein and like his relevance and like essential role in what live music events are to today even, if not for George Wein, right?
I don't know if we have enough time for the
Sure.
one question talk, but anybody here ever been to a music festival? Raise your hand. Yeah, you owe that to George Wein. So we'll start there.
And George is?
George passed away in October, about 4 days shy of his 96th birthday. He was my mentor. I miss him greatly. George Wein was a 5'4" Jewish man who married a black woman in 1959. And he was in the music business. And if you don't think that puts you on the radar of McCarthyism and
Right.
I won't go too into history, but let's just say this. He had created in 1954 America's and arguably the world's first music festival, which was the Newport Jazz Festival, which I also have the good fortune of being the head of. And you have to remember, jazz was this amazing the American art form, right? But what was amazing about jazz, why he did it, is because it was really the first integrated music at a time when that wasn't a thing. And then he got together with a very tall, 6'3", waspy Harvard guy who married a Asian woman. A guy was named Pete Seeger. And the four of them, so it's George and Joyce, Pete and Toshi, basically was like the Rainbow Connection. It was like, the colors of Benetton before it was hip. And they wanted to create a space. Pete had been blacklisted by McCarthy. He was on you can't be on the radio, you can't be on TV, you're a commie, you're a pinko, you're a socialist. And he was truly an egalitarian. He just believed that, I'm not getting it. You look up Pete Seeger. If you don't know Pete Seeger, you're not getting a good enough education. And
then look up Woody Guthrie.
Right, yeah. Who, by the way, you have to remember Pete Seeger inspired Woody Guthrie, then inspired the Beats, then inspired the entire, hippie generation. There's no On the Road without Pete, and that's a pretty famous book. But, so he was the first guy to have my job, was this guy Pete Seeger. And they created the festival as a safe space for artists to do their thing and to speak truth to power, because you have to remember it was the one place where at that time the government couldn't stop them. You could keep Pete off of TV, you could keep Pete off radio, but you couldn't stop people from going to see Pete in a field.
Right.
And I'm going to give you the better narrative, not the kind of facts suck, stories much more fun, is you also have to imagine that this Newport Folk Festival in 1959, so it's 5 years older than the jazz, or 5 years, started 5 years after. And it wasn't called the Newport Pop or Rock Festival, is because that rock and roll was only 3.5 years old.
Right,
it was still a fad.
Right.
It might have been disco, so they were like, we don't want this rock thing. Maybe this thing might pass. So basically what the Folk Festival became was everything that wasn't jazz. It was like the catch-all.
Yeah.
But the most important part about it was they held it in where you can honestly hear the 1% of the 1% in America was located in Newport, Rhode Island. All the robber barons and the Vanderbilts and okay, so they're all there, and you could hear this music of Bob Dylan and Joan Baez and Odetta and Nina Simone and Miles Davis and John Coltrane, and you could hear them. So again, I liked that speaking truth to power. You chose at that time where the wealthiest people in the world were half a mile away from where you're putting a basically massive sit-in. That's kind of cool.
So was that George's intention of
No.
doing it in Newport? Like to put...
No, that wasn't the intention. That's why I
Right.
said facts suck, stories better.
Yeah,
So the odd thing was a bunch of wealthy socialites were bored in Newport in the summer. And
so he brought a bunch of socialists to the
Hey,
socialites.
well, that was 4 years later. But yes, for jazz, how jazz started in Newport was he was given this novel idea. He ran Storyville, which is one of the most famous jazz clubs. It was in Boston. He ran that. Louis Armstrong, everybody. I mean, it was like the jazz club. And all these wealthy individuals were bored in Newport. And they said, hey, we love your amazing, cool music that you put on while we're all in the city. Could you bring it to our summer place? And boom, it was a massive hit, and it was America's, and arguably, there was an opera festival in Vienna that is the oldest festival, but
Okay.
this was the first festival, arguably, in the world.
It's amazing.
So I'm like the third guy to have the job, so there's just no pressure.
Yeah, right. Thankfully, because it has such a strong legacy, everyone in the world wants to play your festival too. So that's...
There's a couple people that are still holding out that we were talking backstage. First thing I did when I got the gig was we have a whiteboard, and I put up, I don't know, the number keeps going up. I started used to telling the story it was 100, now I think it's 200 names, so again, story. Hundreds of names, and over the last 18 years, it's just the greatest pleasure to take the eraser and just be like, they played, take it off the list. And there's about 5 people on the list now.
Oh, would you be willing to share those or
no? They each have their own little picadillos, but I think it's an actual. I think it's a crime. Of some of the names I'm going to say, I think they should be handcuffed and dragged to Newport because it's a crime against the cultural state of America. Like Paul Simon, just a guy, who's had something to do with the music that we revere. Bruce Springsteen. Neil Young was supposed to play in 1969, and I actually have the physical telegram from his manager at the time claiming tonsillectomy. It was actually Buffalo Springfield was supposed to play.
Right. Wow.
Tonsillectomy, and it said sorry, and it was like 10 days before, and then Buffalo Springfield broke up like 10 days later, so it was obviously a bullshit tonsillectomy excuse. Right. But the hysterical thing about it was I was this close to getting Neil in 2020 because I got a reporter from the Wall Street Journal because I'd made a joke saying we had given Buffalo Springfield a $50 deposit, which we had not gotten back. And I had them with Prime. I had this like Wall Street whiz determine exactly what that would have been in today's dollars. And it was like $1,600, it was like $1,658. And I literally made a kind of facetious demand. I said, look, you either write us the check, but if you come back, we're good on the thing. And they printed it in the online version of Wall Street Journal. And I took that link and I sent it to Neil's manager. I said, dude, choices, make the right one.
I don't know if you know this, but people that know me and people from around here know, like my number one top of the list forever has been Neil to come play our little humble festival here in Ohio.
If you get him before I do, fuck you. I work too hard, man. Well, I've been at this longer than you have.
I've been at it for a while too.
Yeah, and then those are the ones that were on the list before I even got there. Then there's the ones that, not because I like personally, I do like them, but I've had some amazing conversations with Tom York over the years, but that's been directly with Tom of the band Radiohead and Eddie Vedder. Again, these are not people that I haven't been able to sit in a room and discuss the opportunity with.
Right.
Every single person I've mentioned, the opportunity has been there to get into it. It's just timing and and pandemic. Man, pandemic. Two of those names were crossed off the list. So you know how hard it was when we canceled them to rewrite their name on the whiteboard.
Oh, right.
So.
Yeah, you have a unique relationship, like unlike I think most festival directors, like with artists and with management directly, which I think has played a huge part in your role of shifting the Newport Folk Festival over the last 15 or plus years that you've been involved. And can you talk about that? What was happening with the festival? And this is a shorter elevator ride now. What was happening with the festival? And then you sort of approached the festival foundation and George, I think in 2007, 8-ish, is that correct? Seven, yeah. And tell us about that, like the shift, what happened, and now your festival sells out in an hour or less. Like
without a lineup.
What a change! Like what an incredible change that you've created there.
I guess this is the education part, and had a great breakfast earlier. I just I was a music fan, just truly just the freak kid that tried to figure out if I could make a living out of making mixtapes. I'm aging myself. Yes, mixed tapes, where you had to find that one song that could fit in the 30 seconds at the very end. It's like Little Martha's.
It's like the playlist you send the person you're crushing on.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, to make friends, but most to make girlfriends. I wanted to be a professional mixtape maker, playlist maker. So that's what I wanted to do for a career. Very early on, that's what I wanted.
It's a good goal.
Yeah. So I actually went to high school in Newport, Rhode Island. It was a prep school. It was a boarding school. So I didn't live there. I just happened to be there, which is fascinating because first time I'd gone to a festival was there was an artist who was playing Newport who I've actually since told the story and laughed and they came back to Newport. I showed up on my bike. I was 15. I was doing summer school. I can tell what kind of a student I was, that I was still at school in the middle of summer. I rode my bike down, saw an amp on the ground, picked it up, and that's how I snuck into my very first music festival. I pretended I was a roadie, and the guy was like, "What are you doing with my gear?" I was like, "I'm helping. I'm part of the team that helps bring in the gear." And so I snuck in and watched how the festival was done at 15. You have to think, having no idea that I would ever have the gig that I have now. And then the second time was I was working for the Farrelly Brothers. They were directors who did like Something About Mary, Dumb and Dumber, Shallow Hal, Me, Myself, and Irene, etc. I was working for them, and I would spend a lot of my days driving around in a car looking at locations. And there's a Jim Carrey, this great actor, and so it'd be me and Jim Carrey and Renee Zellweger and the Farrelly Brothers driving around in this Escalade. And I realized that none of them brought any music, and we'd be in the car for like 4 hours. And so we were filming the movie called Me, Myself, and Irene with Jim Carrey. We were filming it in Newport.
I hope there was a cassette deck in the Escalade.
It was a CD player. And I had burnt, that KCD Logic or Case Logic where all the CDs, and I would, brunch music, driving in car with Farrelly Brother music. Like I was that guy who had list upon list. And so the reason I bring that up is, so in the summer, that was in, I think, 2002, I was driving over the Newport Bridge, which is this gorgeous Golden Gate type of a thing, and you can see where the festival grounds are off to your right. And I remember driving, and they're like, "Hey, could we film this next scene tomorrow? Could we film it at the fort?" I was like, "No, there's this stupid festival happening there," which is the same car ride as I was. And I was like, "Really?" I was like, "Yeah, I used to go there, or I had been there. It's kind of gone way downhill. They're calling it, I don't even want to say the name. It was a sponsor. They named it, the Newport Folk Festival is called the sponsor name Folk Festival.
It was a donut place, wasn't it? Sorry.
Don't. These are old scabs. I don't want to start bleeding again. And I remember later in that car ride is when the Farrellys said to me, "You're wasting your time doing this location shit with us. You should be a music supervisor." And I was like, "I don't know what that is." And then what I gleaned was, "Oh, this is where you make tapes for a living."
Yeah, there you go.
This is the gig that I've always wanted. And they hooked me up. And
you were working for Paste at that time?
No. And then I was like, well, how do I get into doing this? And again, I'm not going to skip my whole, who gives a shit about my thing, but
You're the one
who's editor at large of Paste magazine, which was the best title on a card, to be the editor at large, to basically go embed myself with like the Radiohead or the Roots or the Flaming Lips on a cruise boat for like 3 weeks at a time. It was great. And as a single guy, it was fantastically fun to be on the road, embedded with artists and getting to know who they were, like truly who they were.
Gonzo journalism.
Total gonzo. Yeah. Like if they're going to imbibe, I imbibe what they're imbibing.
Yep.
And I'm going to live the life as if I am with them or one of them.
Yeah.
Fascinating way to learn about music, because you learn all the bad, the combos and Cheetos at a gas station off Route I-70 at 3 in the morning as breakfast. Like you learn all, and I'm not talking about small artists, just huge. Or like, okay, the one room where everyone has to do the number 2 because you can't do number 2 on the tour bus, so you get one motel room when you show up and the tour bus is outside and everyone's using the same John. Like, you learn a lot. And
I think Doc Watson said, "I don't get paid to perform music. I get paid to travel from town to town
that's right.
to town to town."
The fun part was the hour and a half, 2 hours on the stage. Everything else is just work.
Right.
And then in the strangest twist of the weirdest twist of fate, at the actual nadir of the festival, like to the point where it was up for sale for pennies on the dollar, and I had turned my whole business into a music consulting business, and somebody had this great plan to buy all the mom and pop festivals and to try to then turn them and sell them to SFX, which then became Clear Channel, which then became Live Nation. Nope, not going to say anything about Live Nation. Just going to... This was about that close, but...
I think it's okay if you want
no,
to.
there's people looking at me at a camera, at a computer, waiting to trigger me on that subject. But I do remember, again, this is a long elevator ride. I do remember distinctly when they were looking for things to buy, them saying, "What do you think about Newport folk and Newport jazz?" Meaning the people who had hired me to go out around the world and find music festivals to buy, which is a pretty fun gig too, by the way.
That sounds like an incredible
gig. And this was in 2006 and 7, and then probably most of you are too young to remember, but there was a big financial crash in 2008, and these guys were so levered up that they imploded, the people who had hired me.
Yeah.
But I had met with George Wein. Again, you have to think about sneaking in as a kid, knowing about it when I was working in this other, I thought I was going to be in the film business for years. And now he said, "Hey, I read your now somewhat infamous I wrote an 18-page position paper on what Newport could do to become the single best festival in the world." I wrote it, and I wrote it single space. Oh, thank you. I wrote it in single space, and I wrote it from the perspective of somebody who loved fucking music. And had been to music festivals. I was there for the first 10 years of Bonnaroo. I was there. I'd seen great festivals and what they could be, but they were all missing the respite for the artists. There wasn't the home base for the artists to just be like, let's have summer camp and have fun. Like the campfire vibe, when you see your favorite artist in a place where you're not expecting to see them and all the ego has been dropped and they're just as much of a music lover. You know what I'm saying? I don't know.
Absolutely.
And this is difficult to talk about. But yeah, that's the part. And I just said, this doesn't exist in America, and why not have it be America's? This is what the whole festival's DNA was, to be a safe space. It was the place to not be part of corporate America with sponsorship. And like, wouldn't it be great instead if we did everything that everybody else is doing in America with a festival? Let's just literally find the polar opposite.
Yes.
And try that.
I think that it is important to really hit that, and the applause is merited. Like, so everyone saw what was happening to the folk festival.
Yeah, the industry sure did.
But no one except you could see the crucial importance of its foundation and its legacy and where the history of that.
I get far too much credit for turning around. All I did was took the playbook that George and Pete Seeger and just dusted it off and said, "Hey guys, remember when you this?"
Yes, but you had the wherewithal to do that, and no one else did.
I mean, that's like you just said Doc, right? You think you said Doc. Okay, so Doc was playing during the years where, dude, shit like this happened at Newport like every year, and it's like every one of these things is culturally significant.
Yes.
Like
Mississippi John Hurt.
Mississippi John Hurt. First of all, blues were rediscovered at Newport, and that is not an overstatement. These people had records in the 30s and in the 40s, race records. Then they got forgotten about, and Pete and Alan Lomax and all these guys went down to the South, and this guy, amazing guy named Bob Jones, who was one of the other guys who had my job, and found these guys and would give them $50 and a plane or a bus ticket to come up. And those are like Mississippi Fred McDowell, Bucka White, dude, Son House. Like these are like records. This is the most insane names, and a lot of these people are far too young to understand how insane the names I'm saying. But
Yeah.
like found them and like, but Doc Watson, I never forget this story that the Appalachian shape note singers, I don't know if you've ever seen these people that use shape
Yes.
notes that they're illiterate. So I'm just being blunt. A lot of them are illiterate. They can't read. So how do you teach them how to sing music? Well, you teach them with shapes.
Right.
Anyway, that's belittling what shape note singing is,
Yeah,
but you get my point. My
and there
point
was
is
also a aspect of in the church, it was
It's
just sort of a
church.
common language,
Yeah,
right?
and it
Like
was
the shapes were easier to understand.
exactly, and to hit what they meant in notes. But what I meant is mostly, just to call it what it was Appalachian, hollow in the hollow.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
George sent a bus with the Sea Island Singers,
I'm
all
familiar.
black women,
Yeah.
and a bus of Appalachian men shape note singers in like 1961, and sent a bus to pick them both up
Oh, awesome.
to come to the festival grounds.
Right. I would love.
That's like a
I would have
powder
loved to have
keg
been in that
right.
bus.
But the greatest thing happened is all the men were kind of, and they all stood up and gave their seats to the women of the Sea Island Singers. And that might not seem like a big deal, but
Huge.
at that time,
Huge.
that was the power of a music festival. And everybody in the egalitarian spirit for about a decade got paid exactly the same. If you were Bob Dylan, you got $50. If you were Mississippi John Hurt, you got $50. And George fed everybody from a New Orleans chef that he brought up. Everybody, there was a house where all the blues musicians, and there are pictures, remember this has nothing to do with actually being on the festival ground. There was a house called the Blues House where like Elizabeth Cotton, Doc Watson, like Mississippi John Hurt are just sitting on a porch, just jamming. And you're just like, that would literally be like saying like, so Billie Eilish and, whatever, the biggest artist in the entire world just on a porch jamming, because this festival thing didn't exist anywhere else. There wasn't Coachellas and Lollapalooza. In fact, if you talk to the people who started Coachella and Lollapalooza and everything, they're like, if there is no George Wein,
there is no.
there are no festivals.
Yeah.
And you have to remember, it's 15 years older than Woodstock, which most people think is like America's.
Right.
That's great. Woodstock happened 3 times. All 3 times were an unmitigated disaster.
Correct.
Truly, by every definition of
Correct.
catastrophic disaster, all 3 times.
It's amazing more people didn't die.
Truly.
Yes.
That's actually the beautiful part of the original one.
Right.
More people died in the other 2 than the
Yes,
500,000 one. But my point is, Newport, all the sound equipment, everything that was brought up to Woodstock was all the Newport people. The people who ran the sound, ran the stage, ran the lights. They were the ones who created weatherproof boxing for speakers, delay towers. So they all had done over 15 years of trial and error at Newport.
Got it.
I don't know if I'm, again,
No,
man,
it's good, it's good.
it's hard to explain what Newport is. That's the beauty of it. It's almost impossible. Again, so let me get to where we are now. So, no, I'll just jump. Because I'm sparing you this didn't happen like this. That 18-page position paper, I got to bring my team. I got to bring these amazing people I work with, amazing people that had to drink Kool-Aid. And, shout out to more than a few of them who left jobs that were paying them 3 times what I could offer just to be part of it. I mean, literally making true sacrifice to come do it. But I was like, this is the deal. Like, this is the Kool-Aid. Get in. And fascinating things like, how about...
Not Tom Wolfe Kool-Aid.
No. No. But how do you get to the point where a festival now sells out in like 5 to 10 minutes, all the tickets, with no lineup, no advertising, nothing?
You know how jealous I am, right?
And the beauty of it goes to beyond that, which is every single announcement that is made, if a band so chooses to want to be announced, only under the auspice of the check that we write to a nonprofit music-oriented program that I get to sign and give on that artist's behalf to an organization that means something to them. So if you're the National and you want to like, hey, we're finally playing Newport, great, here's X amount of money to the Buffalo Strings program in Buffalo, New York.
Yeah, can we go?
That's how we're announcing you. We're announcing you under the auspices of telling the world that we just made a donation to an organization that you give a shit about. That's how you get announced. And by the way, posters, I mean, God, if I see one more, the world does not need another music festival. Yours made it under the wire. The world doesn't need those. They don't. I know.
I've
what
been
you
there
mean.
since 2005, Jay,
I
just
know.
so you know.
I get you. I just saying that the world doesn't need another poster, another big drop, another thing. It's tough.
Well,
It's
can
tough.
I jump in? So I think, and you have hit hard on this, and part of the beauty of the Newport Folk Festival and Jazz Festival is the community you've created.
Yeah.
And I can say, again, on a much smaller scale, here in Southeast Ohio, we have created a community around our festival.
Yeah.
And I suspect that if a festival in Omaha, Nebraska, if it's done well, there's a community there. So I think there is something to be said about community building that comes from live music events. And I would love to hear your take on that.
Thank you. You set me up. You're doing great, by the way. You set me up because that was the premise of the paper. The premise of the paper was communitas, butchering the Latin of it, but we don't have common shared experiences in person as much as humans used to. I mean this, and I'm not going to get all spiritual on you, but I might.
I encourage.
The actual harmonic convergence of what people in a room, I can get scientific, but believe it or not, everybody that is in this room and is listening to me right now, we will start vibrating, I'm not kidding, more and more in tune with each other because we're in the same room. Now, when you add music, it goes up sixfold. The only difference between me sitting in this room talking is if I do that, literally we will start, I hate the word we will literally start vibrating on the same harmonic wavelength.
Vibrating right now.
It's freaking crazy. Okay, so you have to think what church, for all its BS, no offense, it was a place for people to commune, congregate, be together in a space once a week to share. And you know what happened when you have great things like church like that? The positive side effects is all those stupid little petty differences of they shorted me on my bread or my tomatoes or whatever in that small little town in the 1500s, 1600s, whatever, was all worked out at church, at a common. Okay, so churches, people have been leaving for good reasons in some respects. Lots of religion, people have been going away from actually walking into a chapel and being with their community. So what do you replace that with? Well, I bet you for the young generation, a lot of people, it's like a rite of passage. It's like Rumspringer for everybody is to go to a music festival.
Yes.
And that also coincided, don't forget, exactly with that little button on that little thing called an iPod, shuffle. The shuffle thing did not exist. Shuffle, did everyone remember the shuffle? Most of these kids didn't remember when there was not shuffle. You had to be me, you had to make mixtapes. You hit shuffle.
So let me interpret.
Okay, interpret.
You could go make it to your favorite Spotify playlist and hit shuffle.
Yeah, it didn't exist.
And like all of a sudden you're discovering new artists
Right.
that you wouldn't have known otherwise.
So where did you get music discovery? Right when the word shuffle became a thing in music was right when music festivals started to explode in America. Explode. And it's because I can listen to a hip-hop track and then a down-tempo track and then a folk track and jazz track all within my 1 hour of taking the dog for a walk. And now you could see that and commune with other people that look at a lineup and be like, oh, and I'm gonna skip to my point. My point is this. Why is the community the single most important aspect of a music festival? It's very easy. Because in this day and age, there's too much schism in everything we do, and somebody could represent the complete ideological opposite of me. And they're in the front row, and I'm over there, and we're watching like Nels Cline from Wilco ripping an incredible Impossible Germany solo. And I can look over and not know anything about that cat and be like,
we both love this.
we're both losing our mind. We're both communing to something.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, if I run into that guy at the bar, remember, if I met him anywhere else, I'd probably want to throw a fist.
But the
But
vibrations.
the first thing was like, oh, dude, when he hit the high note and the whole thing, and oh my God, hey, can I buy you a drink? Yeah. Shared common ground, a shared common experience. And we have those things in America in very few places. Big sporting events, which I was the son of a sports editor, so I say this with love. That's like the Romans watching in the arena people killing lions, and
Yes.
someone's going to die.
Yes.
You're watching it for the car crash. That's what NASCAR is. It's
Yes.
it's not this. Okay. But music, I think, is one of those few. It can be one of those few positive things where the common shared experience is about having a shared common experience that is enjoyable and pleasurable.
I think that's really important, and it sort of leads to.
So that's what I wanted Newport to be, at the benchmark of what it could be, and those and the benchmark. The benchmark is. Here we go. Be present, be open, be kind, be together. It's this mantra that I've been saying. People have it tattooed on their bodies, which terrifies the crap out of me. It's scary, but I like it because that is what I've been saying to this audience from the get-go. Those are the rules. Those are the rules. And what you will be fascinated with, and I say this with respect, different than most music festivals I've been to when you come to community, is the first thing that the artists notice when they walk on the stage is they do not see a cell phone in the audience.
Right.
I didn't make some rule
Yep.
that said,
Yep.
hey, but people know when you're doing this,
You can't.
you're interrupting the experience, not enhancing the experience. And I can tell you that the best things happen at Newport, and I think the best things happen at Newport musically is because it isn't being documented. They can look at people's faces and see them getting off on it.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful.
It's incredible.
It is, and it's important.
It's
and
vital.
And I think that we can't understate, especially post-pandemic and post-crazy political environments in the world, we can't understate how important it is, especially as the divide within all of our communities, wherever you might live, seems to be getting a little bit uglier and definitely wider. And I agree that having events such as Newport bring people together.
You don't get into the harmonic convergence through a Zoom call.
Correct.
You just
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah. We've explored the idea of streaming, and some festivals,
Yeah.
festivals I love stream parts of their music festival. I have no interest. I want people to experience
You
it
have to
in
be
person.
at Newport.
Yeah.
If you're at Newport and you experience in Newport, I just love the fact that people in the music industry, if you say Newport, they actually know what you mean.
Yeah.
We've kind of given up the word festival in a lot of ways because it's this. There are 34,000 people who've already given their credit card on the wait list for a 10,000 a day festival.
It's amazing. It really is amazing, and I really am jealous. Watching the video before we came out here, it was beautiful and all sorts of aspects. And I'm also really proud that our little giving myself a little plug here, our own festival. Lots of those artists on the screen have played our festival.
Yeah.
And sometimes
I get pissed at you when I see your lineup. I'm like, shit, he got blank and I didn't get blank.
Jay, it's not a competition. We're vibing together, man.
Bullshit. It's my ego is such. No, it's true. I mean, yes, I am. Look, anybody who has been to Newport in your position is obviously part of the family. If you've made it's not the easiest place to get to, as anybody who's been there will fully attest. You come, you get it. If you get it, it's so trite. If you get it, your family. That's all it.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had a pretty open dialogue since the moment you came.
Yeah, you can feel it. And I remember you sent me a note one year, you might have been pissed, but you congratulated me on our lineup. I think it's because I got Randy Newman before you did, maybe.
You did, asshole. By the way, I put Randy Newman in that goddamn video, just so, yeah.
So, because I would love to keep talking, and there's so much more I want to hear from you, but I know we want to get to some questions from the audience. But before we do that, somewhat related, I really wanted to go down and talk about the independent festival and independent
You mean the
organization.
duopoly that is Live Nation and AEG?
Oh, you said it. You said it.
I said the names out loud.
Yeah.
I didn't say anything negative about them. But you know that little sucker fish that swims under the shark?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I also believe because of independence, there's a little bit more identity and a little more. That's part of why we have, I think, stronger communities than maybe something like one of the giants, right?
I would say that people, I'm going to say it, I would see people are way more proud of being part of Newport than a lot of other things in their life. Of being part of that community.
There's like if you're buying a ticket
so we're clear, the music starts at 11:30 in the morning, and it's over at 7:30. And we are at 100% capacity before a note of music is played. And at 7:30 in the morning, when I show up, there are like 2,500 people at the gate
waiting to
get in, but it's a GA thing. But even at like 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock when they're headliner, you can walk right up to the front row. So it's not like they're getting a position where they're like, okay, I now own it, I'm against the rail, mojo barrier. The crazy thing is, someone made a comment, and they were actually kind of right. The reason they get there, the doors don't even open until 10, by the way. So they're there for like 2.5 hours just in this corral.
That's part of the hang.
That's the hang, man. It's like, oh, hey, that's Bob. I only see Bob at Newport. And Bob, how are the wife and kid? Like, it is, someone has said, during the pandemic, if I had just thrown the festival in 2020 with no music, 30% of the audience would have just shown up.
Right.
And by the way, we didn't throw it, and I went down there on the day of the festival, and there was easily 3,000 people.
Wow.
On the fort grounds.
Just hanging.
Playing the radio, the internet radio that we had put out into the world. I just started bawling.
Yeah.
Like, I was walking around and just being like, and there were people having picnics on the grounds of the festival. They were like, we're going even if you're not happening. And we were the very first known, like the very first festival, very first festival back in America in 2021. And every single, I know you weren't, but the big, let's just say the people from Coachella to Lollapalooza to Osheaga were either at Newport or on my cell phone being like, tell me, like, what's happening? Are people moving? Right. Are they all mad? Like, you have to remember what that was like, coming back. So the very first festival in America was the very first music festival back in the pandemic. We thought that was a good narrative. Somebody had to do it.
You do incredible work, Jay, and it's beautiful. Like it's powerful, and it is spiritual, and it is vibey, and it's awesome. So thanks for sharing those stories with us. If Josh gives us another hour later on, maybe we can talk more. But I do want to take some questions from the audience, because I'm sure
anybody's going to have any. That's the way I talk. They're probably going to be like, I don't want to ask that guy a question.
Does anyone have any questions for Jay?
I was wrong. Very brave.
Thanks for being here. My name's Liz, and my question for you is actually about festival design. So having worked with Tim and going to the Nelsonville Music Festival for so many years, Tim and his team do a great job of creating different stages so that, for example, like the No-Fi Cabin, where you're in a small room with probably less than 50 people, and you're in it, man. You're in it. The person's right there in front of you. It's acoustic. So how big of a role do you play in festival design and creating experiences that are a little bit smaller and more intimate?
Wow, did you plant her over there? Okay. It's unbelievably, well, one, I'm bragging. Coachella, Lollapalooza, artist puts out their press release and it says, I'm playing Coachella, Lollapalooza, Newport, Bonnaroo. One of those things is truly not like the others. The old Sesame Street song, you know, one of these things is not like the other. One of these things just does not belong. That's us. Why? Because we are literally 1/10. People use literally wrong all the time. We are literally 1/10 the size of those events. But why is it getting put up there? So one, by the festival being 10,000 and being that thing in itself is beyond intimate. That's the first. And then within that, believe it or not, we have 4 stages. And one of the stages holds 125 people. And this guy named Chris Christopherson, who was first discovered at Newport when Johnny Cash told George Wein, I'm not going on unless you give my guitar player a slot. And blackmailed, I'm not walking on the stage, and I'm the headliner, you got to give my guy a slot. And so you can actually hear George Wein on the tape saying, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Chris Christopherson. He's so pissed. And that was Chris Christopherson's first time ever playing as Chris Christopherson with Newport. So I don't know, he's in a bad shape. He's still with us, thank God, but he's not in the greatest shape. So a couple of years ago, we found out that he was going to leave public life. And he told his wife, I want to be my last public performance. I want to go back to Newport. And I want to try to play one song, and me and Bobby McGee, which he wrote. And he chose to do it in the museum stage at Newport.
I saw that set.
It ended up being an hour long, and people were just
cried.
generally weeping.
Chris cried.
Oh, I mean,
He
it was
crying.
where he had started his music career in 1965, and he came back. So yeah, those moments happen. And my favorite moment, to answer your question, is we have this thing called the Late July Family Tent. It's a whole other story, but it's an amazing little, cute little tent. And there's a thing, with a ride, you have to be above this big to go the ride. It's the opposite. You can't come into this tent if you're above this line. So it's just for the little tykes. But it's amazing. You'll see like the amazing camp guys who will be up soon. They'll go play their set on the main stage and then run down to go play for 30, 40, 50, like sub 8-year-old kids all sitting there, within 10 minutes of walking off the main stage. So Newport in itself, there's also a pop-up stage where Andrew Bird last year got up, and it's all for those 25-minute changeovers. Here's the thing. The answer is, if there is a space on site, it's tiny. I mean, it's so hard to explain how small. It's an island. So if there's a space on site where there is silence, I'm not doing my job. Like, it's too much music. It's way too much music. It's too much music to actually ingest, which is perfect.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have a question?
Over here.
Hi.
Hi there, Carly Dixon from the Brightside venue in Dayton. First, I just want to say I was maybe at the Apolline version of, I know. So, and my daughter has participated in the puppet parade at Nelsonville. So both of you have played this integral role in the fabric of my family's life. So first and foremost, I just want to thank you both for what you do. It has been special memories for my family.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I also would say that I'm the owner of a totally independent mom and pop 600-person venue in Dayton, Ohio, and I would love to be part of an ecosystem that thinks the way what you're talking about is exactly what we do day in and day out, but knowing how to differentiate, where to find talent, who to network with, who to vibe with, we get it. We just hosted Wim Hof last week. I did it. I ice bathed. These are things that we do in our space.
I'm a Wim Hof acolyte, so you're speaking my language.
Yeah, so this is, we're trying to do things that impact people in a real way and connect on exactly the level you're discussing, where we want people to be welcome regardless of what part of our community they came from, and where do we go to network, to find performers, other people that are in the field, et cetera. How do we become part of that ecosystem?
Somehow sucker him into being backstage at his festival. That's it. I mean, that's not a throwing it off. What I'm trying to say is Newport last year in 2021, there were 12 artists, not individual, 12 bands that showed up at Newport not having a slot. I hope you're guessing the jump is what there are. The entire Grammy, the Grammy, most of the Grammy nominators, most of the Grammy, the whole engine, that's where they come for the weekend is Newport. There's more happening backstage at a music festival. If you can get to that inner sanctum of community, it's where it's all happening, all of it. But things like ours are different because of their communal nature. Artists aren't trying to get in and get the hell out. They want to, it's a respite. They just want to
They come and hang.
They wanna hang.
They play one day, but they hang for three.
And what it is, hey, I was noticing you're into Wim Hof. I'm into Wim Hof. I'm leading a Wim Hof class tomorrow. You want in? Now that person's a friend for life, and you have something to talk about other than music or the fact that you run a venue. Right. Don't open with I run a venue, because the shield goes up.
Right.
Yeah.
You like paella? I like paella. It's a great opener,
And it is really just such a small world, just like everything, right? I suppose if you're like a furniture upholster, like that world is probably also small. But
I would say this to that exact thing. Here's a great one for you. Have you done Newport? Yeah. Talk about, if you've been, I'm just be honest, if I think I speak for a lot of those artists, like they will gladly tell you about that specific experience they had there, why it was different.
Yeah.
And if you then follow up with, yeah, I had that experience too, and you have a shared common experience, even though it's the same thing as you and I might not get along, but we both have this one commonality, the next line is, yeah, I'm trying desperately to do that in my room. Really? That's awesome. And boom, there you go.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I think we have time for at least one more.
Oh, if it's only one more.
No, go ahead, please.
What I was going to ask is, how do you think music festivals have changed since you wrote that letter? And what do you think festivals can learn from what you've done at Newport versus what would be sort of what would be versus what would be difficult to duplicate that Newport already does?
Yeah, making it not about the bottom line. It's pretty, I mean, we had a great conversation. It's really easy to say that, but when Live Nation is somewhat of a nameless, faceless, tell me the person who you're like, oh my God, I went to Coachella and I was hanging with the me or the you of there. I mean, I know Paulie's a wonderful guy, but my point is the audience doesn't. It's a kind of a thing. It's a name. So I would say that Live Nation is a publicly traded company, and by nature, a publicly traded company has to answer to the shareholders. And when you're answering to the shareholders, are you thinking about enhancing the experience or more apt interrupting the experience by the Acura stage at serving the Budweiser DJ of the week? Like, really? Does that have anything about that spirituality of why we all love music? Does that have anything to do with it? It's co-opting it, and it's for the bottom line. And I have to take some of those gigs, just be clear that what's not in my CV is the other 5 festivals I book as a ghost booker, so people don't even know I'm involved. I collect that check so I can do Newport. So I think you can't replicate, I don't know how you can replicate the spirituality of music. I think you either have it or you don't. And if you're trying to win people over by just adding more names to your lineup, I don't know. I think people dig curation. I think people want people who they trust to tell them, every movie, every book you read, yeah, maybe there's an algorithm that got you there, but my also guess is the thing that put the actual do in the motion of going to do something was a friend you trusted or a voice you trusted. And I think what you can't duplicate with Newport or even what he does is, if you either have to trust what I'm doing, and by the way, when I say trust, you don't know what the lineup is at Newport till you show up. How's that? Like, I'm not talking about you bought your ticket and then you're like, okay, they're gonna slowly release the lineup. In 2021, we had 6 days of music and we didn't tell anybody who was playing. So you show up and you're like, okay, oh shit, Beck, Bleachers, Dolly Parton, Kermit the Frog. Like, holy crap. How many people, what I'm saying is we're already separating the musical omnivores from the people who just were like, I'm just here to see Marshmello. Like, not to be mean, but my point is how do you duplicate that? You spend 20 years building people's trust. And I don't think trust comes from throwing money at a thing and making it, watch our light show and watch the lights and the smokes and the lasers. When we were talking backstage, this friend of mine, Chris, was saying, the best thing about Newport is there's no place to hide. It's over at 7:30. It's never dark, and there's no lights. So you get up there, and you either gotta bring it, or people are gonna sit on their hands. I don't know if that answered your question, but sorry.
No, I think that's
Can we give this guy one?
Yeah, please.
Real quick. I'm Skylar. I'm from a band called The Roof. We're based out of Pittsburgh, PA. I resonate with Wim Hof all day. I just finished his book, Baby, all about the frequencies. But I was just going to ask if there's a booking email that I could send our press kit to so we could, like play at the gate for $50 or something.
Yeah, well, I can do you one better. Gratefully, I don't have an email, which is awesome. Yeah, you can send. I know you think when you write something to info at it doesn't go, but I actually, Becca is her name. she's probably watching and being really pissed right now that I'm throwing this out there to the world. But we have busking series, and the greatest thing is it's like it'll be Fred Armisen or Beck, and then it'll be maybe you, and there's a whole part of Newport where it's free. It's a busking thing during the festival, like right outside the grounds while people are coming and going, and literally could be one of the biggest selling artists in the world, and then you're not there yet, but you will be the second biggest selling artist in the world, just singing. And so a lot of Newport, this is going to sound really weird, a lot of Newport is just making the pilgrimage. I got to explain it, like, you go, and next thing you know, you're going to meet someone, then maybe you go out on the road with them, maybe you support them, maybe you do that. I'm telling you, man, like, it's that weird of a joint. Newport is such a weird epicenter that you just make the Mecca, make the pilgrimage, and your life will change. I know that sounds completely...
I dig it.
But that's I can't tell you how many artists just were like, yeah, I went to... There's this band, Goose. I don't know if you've heard of them. They had been coming to the festival for like 4 years, just in the audience and doing whatever, and they're playing this year. And they then told me that they'd been coming for 4 years, and they're like, we just knew if we just kept coming, somehow we'd end up on this stage somehow.
Yeah.
And I was like, that was awesome. Way to manifest that thing.
Thank
Manifest it. Manifest it. Just go.
you. Yes, sir.
Thanks, Jay.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you, everyone. A huge thank you to Josh Antonuccio and Drew Holzapfel and the whole team that put on this summit. It's really incredible and special and important.
You guys are very fortunate to have a community with the people that he just named who will actually do hard things.
Yes.
Again.
Yeah. And I believe you're going to be out here. Again, right?
To really wow you. Eventually, I'm probably going to move to that seat. I hope you kept it warm.
I think so.
And I'm going to move to that
That's
seat.
vibing hard.
Yeah. So I'll pick up your vibrations when I sit in your seat. So Camp is coming up. I don't know if you've heard this great little band called Camp that I think most people are here to see and not me.
Yes.
So yeah.
Thank you, Jay, very much.
I'm going to get a drink of water. I'll see you soon.